Before we start the show today, I need to let you guys know this section that you're listening right now, this was recorded after I was ready to submit this episode. It was supposed to be an episode on Wednesday, and I'm recording this right now. It's Saturday night, and why I'm doing this is because of what I just received on my as a notification, and I've been keeping up with the news of what's going on in our currently in our country. So what I mean is like this was recorded, edited, and all that. So you know what I mean. I was serious. I was ready to turn it in. Then the news broke. This the Tom Homan, the so-called border czar, just ordered the National Guard to Los Angeles, not to help the people, not to support communities, not to provide aid, but to target the protesters. So specifically the people protesting against the ICE raids, the same raids that are ripping families apart, that are dragging undocumented people out of their homes, their schools, their workplaces, and what can only be called a state-sanctioned kidnappings. Let's be clear, guys. ICE isn't enforcing law. They are enforcing state-sponsored terror. They're raiding neighborhoods and they're detaining people with no due process, no warning, and no humanity. And now the federal government is deploying the military to defend that violence and to suppress anyone who dares to stand up against it. So yeah, this episode changed. It went from being a commentary to being a alarm sirens, guys. This is serious. This administration under Donald Trump and this dude named Tom Homan or Homan or whatever his stupid name is, and the people who back him isn't just cruel, it's dangerous. It is using the power of the state to silence dissent, to target marginalized communities, and to treat humans like political pawns. This isn't about national security, guys. This is about power and control. This is about punishing the poor and the undocumented and the ones who dare to resist. And I need you to feel this. They're sending troops into our cities to protect ICE raids, to protect kidnapping operations. So now we need to speak louder. We need to fight harder. We need to show up for the people who are being hunted in silence. Because we, as citizens, as people who have the rights to be here or have the power to do this, we have the responsibility to defend the defenseless, to speak for the voiceless, to raise hell when the government tries to normalize cruelty. This show isn't just commentary anymore. It's a call to action. And if you ever wonder when it's time to give a fucking damn, it's now. I can't talk anymore because of how frustrating this is. That we are allowing this to happen. We say that we need to fix the problem, and then we still have our stupid politicians, like the Democrats, going, "Oh, we need to fix this," and they don't do shit. We need to fix this. You, as the audience, need to help me get to these stupid governors, these stupid politicians, call them up, say, this is wrong. We need to protest against them. So please, enjoy the remaining of this episode. I just had to bring this up before the actual episode because this is alarming. All right, y'all, and welcome back to The Problem With. And today we're in the section of The Lies We Tell. I'm your host, Luis. I'm a teacher, Marine Corps veteran, and someone who's sick and tired of watching this country play dumb about the double standard that's as old as America itself. Today's episode is about protest, and more specifically, who is allowed to do it without being brutalized, criminalized, or killed. Because let's stop pretending we don't know how this works. If you're black, brown, undocumented, indigenous, or LGBTQ, or just not white and conservative, your protest isn't protected. It's not seen as patriotic, it's not seen as brave, it's not seen as legal. You are called a thug, a looter, a terrorist, a threat to quote-unquote law and order. But when white conservatives throw a tantrum, when they show up with rifles, zip ties, Confederate flags, and tactical vests, suddenly it's about freedom? Suddenly they're concerned citizens. Suddenly they are patriots. That's not just hypocrisy, that's white supremacy in plain sight. And look, I don't say this lightly. I say it because I've watched it happen. Think about this. Colin Kaepernick took a knee, peacefully, quietly, respectfully, and lost his entire NFL career. But Kyle Rittenhouse crossed state lines with an AR-15, killed 2 people, and walked away not only a free man, but a conservative hero. He got speaking gigs, he got merchandise, he got applause. Meanwhile, someone like Tamir Rice, he was 12 years old and got killed in seconds for playing with a toy gun. That's not law and order. That's not justice. That is a message. A message that says if you're white and armed, we'll protect you. But if you're black and breathing, we'll watch you die. And you know what else proves that? The Capitol insurrection, January 6th. Thousands of mostly white, mostly male extremists stormed a federal building. They beat cops with American flags, they erected gallows, and tried to overthrow an election. And many of them walked out untouched. Hell, some of them were escorted down the steps politely. Some went back to their hotel rooms. Some flew home the next day and bragged about it on Facebook. Now imagine, just imagine, if that crowd had been black or undocumented or Palestinian or Muslim or anything else. Would that have made it past that first barricade? You and I know both the answer to that. They'd be buried. So don't come with me with this all protests are treated the same bullshit. Because they're not. They never have been. You can protest for racial justice and get met with tear gas, riot shields, and armor tanks. You can protest a police shooting and end up dead or disappear yourself. But protest a mask mandate while white, you get a news interview and a handshake. This is the reality. The right to protest isn't about what you are protesting. It's about who you are when you do it. White gun owners shouting about tyranny, protected. Black moms begging for clean water or safe schools, demonized. Latino immigrants protesting ICE raids, targeted. Indigenous activists defending sacred land, beaten, arrested, silenced. And right now, at the time recording this so-called border czar is probably doing something worse coming up. So it's like he's probably gonna go against peaceful people, protesting forced disappearances, being treated like criminals for saying that kidnapping people in broad daylight is wrong. That's where we are. And this is the lie we're exposing today. That protest is protected in America. Because it is, but only if you look the part. Only if your cause is whitewashed, apolitical, or approved by the people in power. So today we're pulling that lie apart. We're going to talk about Ferguson. We're going to talk about Standing Rock. We're going to talk about DACA protests, George Floyd, Kyle Rittenhouse, and yes, January 6th. Because this isn't just about protests. It's about race. It's about which lives are allowed to speak and which ones are expected to stay silent, obedient, and disposable. Let's get into it. So let's start with a simple question. One that really shouldn't be hard to answer. What makes a protest quote unquote violent? Is it broken windows? Graffiti on a wall? Marching without a permit? Or is it the skin color of the people doing it? Because I've watched peaceful protests get labeled as riots before they even start, just because the crowd was black or brown. I remember Ferguson. Michael Brown was murdered, left dead in the middle of the street for 4 hours like his life didn't matter. People were devastated. They showed up with grief, with rage, with questions. And instead of answers, they got armored vehicles and riot squads. I'm not being dramatic. I mean literal tanks. They had snipers on rooftops, tear gas canisters flying into neighborhoods where children lived, cops in full combat gear pointing rifles at unarmed teenagers holding cardboard signs. Let that image live in your mind for a second. There was no weapons, no threats, no violence, and yet the response was full-blown martial law, as if grieving while black is a criminal offense. Now jump ahead, January 6, 2021. Not a protest, not a march, an insurrection. Don't let anybody else tell you otherwise, because it was an insurrection. Thousands of white extremists, pumped full of lies and Fox News conspiracies and QAnon, stormed the U.S. Capitol. They beat police with American flags. They shattered windows, smeared feces on walls, planted pipe bombs in D.C. They walked through the Senate floor shouting about hanging elected officials. And what happened? Some took selfies with Capitol Police. Some got calmly escorted out. Some flew home that same night, unbothered. Many didn't get arrested for weeks, even if at all. So let's go even further down on this. One group was mourning the loss of a child. The other was trying to overthrow the government. And yet somehow the media, the politicians, the system still wants you to think both sides were equally problematic. Let me be clear. This is the lie. This is a big fat lie. Because this isn't about what you do, it's about who you are. Let's take it to Standing Rock. Native nations coming together in ceremony, drumming, praying, singing to protect their land, their water, their sacred sites. Again, no weapons, no threats, no violence. And what did the government respond? They responded with water cannons and freezing temperatures. Rubber bullets aimed at people's faces, attack dogs, helicopters overhead, peaceful elders arrested and brutalized. All for standing on land that was already theirs. Now contrast that with what happened in Oregon. A group of white ranchers, heavily armed, stormed and occupied a federal building for 41 days. Guns out, threats made. And what did law enforcement do? They negotiated, they waited, they gave them snacks. The standoff ended in court appearances and plea deals. No batons, not mass incarcerations, not tanks. Same action, different people, radically different response. And we haven't even talked about Colin Kaepernick. The man kneeled. He didn't yell. He didn't burn anything. He didn't lay a finger on anyone. He took a knee, a peaceful, silent protest against police brutality. And what happened? He was blackballed. He slandered, called a traitor to his country by a sitting U.S. president. And you know who it is, Donald Trump. I'm not gonna go around it. It was Trump, and he's a terrible person. He lost his job and lost his future. Meanwhile, Kyle Rittenhouse walked into a protest with an AR-15, killed 2 people, and walked away with fanboys, fundraisers, media tours, and a college scholarship. That's the message being sent, and it's loud and clear. If you protest while black, you're a thug. If you protest while indigenous, you're a threat. If you protest while undocumented, you're a criminal alien. But if you protest while white and conservative, you're a patriot, a freedom fighter, a defender of liberty. It's not just hypocrisy. It's a warning sign. This is what two-tier justice system looks like. And it's not broken. It's working exactly as it's designed to. From the slave patrols to the Trail of Tears to the deportation rates of today. And this country has always made protest conditional. If you come from the margins, you're expected to suffer in silence. The moment you speak, this isn't in the troops. But here's the thing. They didn't plan for we're done. They weren't done like... I'm trying to get this the best way I could say. Here's the thing that they didn't really plan for, the government. They didn't plan for the people who are staying quiet. People are done playing dumb. We've seen the game, and we're calling it out. Because protest isn't the problem. Injustice is. And if we don't keep showing up, if we don't keep shouting truth into the face of this machine, then they win. And we can't let that happen. So let's talk about history for a second. Because people love to say, this isn't who we are. But that's a lie. That's exactly who we are as a country. America was born from protest, from rebellion, from looting, from violent defiance in the name of the so-called freedom. Let me remind you, the American Revolution wasn't peaceful. It wasn't a gentle walk to City Hall or a candlelight vigil. It was property destruction. It was looting. It was armed resistance. They dumped thousands of pounds of British tea into Boston Harbor. They torched government buildings. They vandalized loyalist businesses. They took up muskets, shot British soldiers in the streets, and declared war on their own government. This wasn't called terrorism. It wasn't called a riot. It was called a revolution. And every year we teach it to kids like it's a scripture. We launch fireworks to honor it. We take the day off, grill hot dogs, and call it patriotic. But when black people march through the streets chanting, "I can't breathe," after watching a man get murdered on camera, suddenly the same country screams, "Law and order." When people kneel peacefully in silence, they're called ungrateful. When people block a freeway or stage a sitting, they're called anarchists. When someone throws a brick after generations of state violence, suddenly that becomes the focus of the entire narrative. Let me ask you something. Why is white rebellion remembered as bravery, but black resistance or any kind of resistance is labeled a riot? Because the system was never designed to treat our pain as legitimate. It was built to contain it, to control it, to silence it, not to understand it. Let's go back to 2020. The murder of George Floyd sparked one of the largest protest movements in modern history. Over 20 million people across all 50 states took to the streets. It was overwhelmingly peaceful. No guns, no bombs, just boys, candles, signs, knees on pavements, all that. And how did the system respond? Tanks, rubber bullets, helicopters, curfews, mass arrest. And you had right-wing media foaming out of the mouth over looting. Let's talk about that. The obsession of looting. I was like, why? Because the GOP didn't want to talk about George Floyd's last breath. They didn't want to talk about police brutality, qualified immunity, or systemic racism. No. They wanted to talk about a Nike store window. They wanted to talk about a stolen TV. Suddenly, a sneaker rack had more value than a black life. Suddenly, broken glass was a bigger national crisis than a man calling for his mother while dying under a cop's knee. And yet, when white rioters looted the actual Capitol building, destroyed historic property, defecated in hallways, and beat law enforcement officers to death, those same politicians stayed silent. Not a word about looting or no Blue Lives Matter flags inside. Because apparently looting is only a problem when minorities do it. Apparently property damage only matters when it doesn't come from your base of voters. And let's not forget St. Louis. A group of Black Lives Matter protesters walked peacefully through a gated neighborhood using the sidewalk, breaking no laws. And out comes Mark and Patricia McCloskey. They were barefoot, wild-eyed, and waving a pistol and AR-15 at unarmed protesters. They should have been arrested on the spot. But what happened? They got a Fox News feature. They got donations. They got invited to speak at the Republican National Convention. A couple who literally threatened people with deadly weapons not only walked free, they became GOP celebrities. Let that sink in. Because if there had been a black person, it's like prioritizing guns pointing guns at white marchers, you already know they'll be dead or in prison. This isn't about looting. It's not about violence. It's not even about protest. It's about who's doing it and what they're protesting for. If you're demanding racial justice, they call you a thug. If you're protesting, all that stuff. If you protest ICE raids, you're labeled a threat to national security. And if you're standing in solidarity with Palestine, they try to criminalize your speech, deport you and all that. But if you're storming the Capitol with zip ties and Confederate flags, suddenly you're a patriot, a concerned citizen? This country doesn't hate protests. It hates accountability. It hates being Reminded that justice doesn't mean the same thing for everyone. Because if the system actually worked for all of us, we won't be in the streets. We won't need hashtags. We won't need vigils or marches or names written on cardboards. We'd be home, living, breathing safely. But we're not, because America loves protest as long as it protects the powerful, as long as it doesn't challenge capitalism, as long as it keeps the hierarchy in place. But protest isn't supposed to be comfortable. It's not supposed to be a convenient thing. It's supposed to disrupt, to agitate, to make people uncomfortable enough to change. So if you are more outraged by broken windows than broken necks, by a burning police car than the burning planet, by a looted target than a stolen life, then let's be honest. You were never about peace. You were about control. Now let's talk about the media for a second, because you don't need tear gas to distort a protest. You don't need bullets to kill a movement. All you need is a camera and someone willing to lie behind it. The truth is, media coverage shapes how people feel about protests way more than what actually happens on the ground. It's not about facts, it's about framing. And if you've seen it, let's see, a group of black or brown protesters gathers downtown. The choppers are already in the sky, the sirens are already cued, and the headlines already written. Urban unrest, violent mobs, riots erupt after officer-involved incident. Now, I want you to notice the language there. Officer-involved incident or shooting. Like it's some mutual accident, like someone didn't just get executed by the state. They never said police murder. They never showed the body, just the broken glass. Meanwhile, remember April 2020 when armed white men stormed the Michigan State Capitol with rifles, bulletproof vests, and Confederate flags? Again, this is Michigan, and they were waving Confederate flags. They got inside the building. They screamed in police officers' faces. They held signs that said, "Tyrants get the rope." And what did the media call it? Tensions rise as demonstrators push back against lockdown orders. Protesters voice concerns over government overreach. Second Amendment activists gather in Lansing. Second Amendment activists? That was an armed occupation. That was a dress rehearsal for January 6th, and the press treated it like it was a PTA meeting. Let me even be more clear. This isn't just about Fox News or all the right-wing media. This includes CNN, MSNBC, and your local station, your morning paper, all of them. They all participate in this in different ways. Take, again, the 2020 George Floyd protests, the largest civil rights movement in U.S. history. Yes, someone's going to argue that it's not as big as the civil rights movement, but trust me, this was worldwide, not just U.S. And according to Harvard study, 93% of those protests were peaceful. No fires, no looting, no violence. But what did the media show on loop for weeks? That one burning Target, that one Walgreens window shattered in Minneapolis, that one guy with the stolen lamp. They took 5 seconds of chaos and erased millions of peaceful marches. They ignored the medics, the organizers, the folks handing out the water en masse during a pandemic. They made it look like a war because peace doesn't sell. But flames? Oh man, those get the clicks. And every time they do that, it reinforces the lie that black protest is violent, that Latino protest is un-American, that immigrant protest is suspicious, that indigenous protest is somehow an extremist. But let a group of angry white people wave the Confederate flags and scream about gas prices, suddenly the cameras find sympathy. Suddenly it's all about economic anxiety or feeling left behind. Economic anxiety? Are you fucking kidding me? Where was that energy for Flint, Michigan, where black and brown families didn't have clean drinking water for years, and they still don't? Where was that empathy for Hurricane Maria victims in Puerto Rico who waited months for aid? And then Trump goes over there and tosses paper towels like it's a basketball to people. Where was that soft language when black folks were marching because their neighbors were being murdered in broad daylight? Let's talk about the coverage of police brutality at these protests. You remember what happened in Buffalo, right? A 75-year-old white man, Martin Gugino. Sorry if the families listen to this. I'm sorry, I messed that up. He walked up to a police in a peaceful protest. Cops shoved him to shove him so hard his skull cracked open on the sidewalk, and there was blood. There's a video evidence of all of that. And they walked past him like he was trash. And when Trump commented on it, he implied it was a stage. The media barely blinked. Contrast that with January 6th, where white rioters beat Capitol officers with flagpoles and crushed another between doors, and suddenly anchors were crying on TV. Now the police matters. Now they care about blue lives. It's selective outrage, and it's dishonest as hell. Because if Breonna Taylor, Elijah McClain, and Manuel Ellis had been white and killed the way they were, the media wouldn't be asking what they were wearing, who they dated, or whether they smoked weed. They'd be on billboards, there'd be candlelight vigils and GoFundMes and nationwide sympathy. But when you're black or brown, even your death gets edited to fit a fucking narrative. And that's what the media does best. Edit the truth until it's unrecognizable. They mute the chants. They crop the cops out of frame. They frame the broken glass like it mattered more than broken bones. Because if this country ever really saw what happens at these protests, the courage, the solidarity, the raw pain, the righteous anger, people might actually start asking questions. And questions lead to accountability, and they don't want that. So instead, the media feeds a safer version of the truth. One where cops are always heroes, protesters are always violent, and white anger is always justified. But we're not here to play along, because let's be real, this country will call a protest violent before it ever calls injustice wrong. And as long as that's true, we're gonna keep showing up, loud, visible, unapologetic, and completely unafraid. Now look, before I close this out, I need to say something to make everybody clear, because I know how this goes. I know how they twist your words, how they clip the sound bites, how they flip your passion into something they can call radical. Especially when you're calling out the kind of injustice they're too comfortable to face, or too complicit to admit. So let's be crystal damn clear. I'm not encouraging looting. I am not promoting violence. I am not here to burn down buildings. That's not what this is about. But what I am here to say is this. If a shattered store window makes you angrier than a shattered spine, if you feel more sorrow for a torched target than for a father shot dead in front of his kids, if you raise your voice louder about graffiti than about George Floyd, Breonna Taylor, Tyree Nichols, etc., then don't talk to me about peace. Don't talk to me about morals, because what you care about isn't justice. It's order. It's control. It's silence dressed up like civility. Because this country has never accepted protest when it comes from the people it's been stomping on. Go back and look. Rosa Parks sat down and they put her in handcuffs. Dr. King preached peace and they tapped his phone, threw him in jail, and left his body in a pool of blood. The Freedom Riders got dragged off buses, beaten unconscious, and firebombed. Malcolm X was gunned down in front of his family. 4 little black girls were blown to pieces for daring to pray in the wrong church. All of it peaceful. All of it met with state-sponsored terror. And they have the nerve to ask why people are angry? They gaslight us into thinking about how we protest, but the truth is, they just don't want us to protest at all. They want our pain to stay quiet. They want our rage to stay hidden. They want our grief to look respectable, sanitized, but like they want us to be grateful, or to just act like it was back in the 1950s. But there's no respectable way to grieve for your humanity in a system that doesn't value it. We have knelt, we have marched, we have held hands and sang songs, we have filled out ballots, we have begged, written, donated, educated, and organized. And still, they come at us with rubber bullets, riot gear, and handcuffs. Still, they pass laws to shut us up. Still, they smear us up. They arrest us, survey us, and sometimes kill us. And why? Because truth is dangerous. And this country has always feared truth in the mouths of people that tries to erase. And now we're in the middle of this unraveling. And the same folks who laugh when Trump mocked the disabled, who cheer when ICE put kids in cages, who clap when police crack skulls, who said blue lives matter while ignoring every black one and an immigrant and any minority, now they're panicking, now they're uncomfortable, now they're crying because democracy feels fragile. No, you don't get to light the match and act confused when the fire spreads. You don't get to clutch your pearls while the house burns. Not when you built a fucking house on injustice and oil. So let me make this plain. There is no wrong way to demand dignity. There is no incorrect volume to cry out in pain. There's no perfect script for protest because every path has already been called dangerous by the same people who profit from our silence. So no, I don't condone looting, but I do understand desperation. I understand rage. I understand what happens when you scream for decades and still no one listens. And I will not let this system or this media or this sanitized political class reduce centuries of resistance to broken glass. Because here's the real truth. We are not just fighting injustice. We're fighting the erasure of the right to fight it. They are criminalizing protests, outlawing movements, trying to disappear resistance like it never existed. They want to ban it from the classroom, erase it from the textbooks, rewrite it in courtrooms. They want to turn resistance into terror and obedience into patriotism. But they don't get to write the ending. We do. So speak up, show up, call out the lies, challenge the noise, be loud, be proud, be disruptive, be inconvenient. Because if comfort comes at a cost of justice, then it's not peace, it's submission. And I didn't survive everything I've seen just to place nice with these white supremacists. Your voice, your truth, that is more powerful. That's the most powerful weapon you got. And they know it. That's why they're trying to take it. So don't let them. Again, I'll finish this part. And just to be clear, if you're someone who, before 2016, you voted for Trump, it was a big mistake. And you got fooled. Shame on you. Shame on them. And then 2020, you still voted for him. There's a pattern here. And now you saw what was happening that led up to his election, like all the Project 2025, and he was not hiding it. Everybody warned you. Immigrants warned you. Everybody, black immigrants, your family, your sons, your daughters, everybody was telling you that don't vote for this maniac because he's gonna be dangerous. But you still voted for him. You still voted for the same GOP who's still trying to destroy America. You don't get at this point you don't get to say, oh, I made a mistake. You need to own it. You need to be fighting with us now. You need to admit that you made not just say that, oh, I made a mistake. No. You need to show and prove to us why you made that mistake. And because I know at this point, you're just proving that you're being a bigot and a racist and a misogynistic. You don't care about humans. You don't care about your neighbor. You only care about you, and you only care about the stupid to protect the narrative that anybody who's a minority is the problem and anybody who's white is the patriot. So I'm sorry that if I'm going out of the rails at this point, because this is ridiculous. And it's obvious that we need to I don't know, guys. It's just frustrating. And we thought after 2020 things will change. They never did. I believe that. I thought 2020 will be a change, even when I didn't want to vote for Biden, because man, him, compared to Donald Trump, it was some form of sanity. And then whenever Kamala Harris was on, again, then that was not my candidate. That's not who I wanted. But again, this is the metaphor that I can come up with best. Why? It's like saying in the 2024 election, it was this. You go to a restaurant and then you said, hey, I want Coca-Cola. I want Coca-Cola. And then they said, sorry, we only have two options. We have Pepsi and we have gasoline. In this metaphor, Kamala Harris was Pepsi and Trump was gasoline. I don't like Pepsi as much, but I will rather drink Pepsi because I know I will survive instead of gasoline. So this is what I'm finishing with this. We need to keep fighting, guys. We need to keep fighting for our rights because every day it seems like it's getting really dim. Okay? So with that, this has been The Lies We Tell. I'm your host, Luis, and I'll see you next time.